Let him prove that he has paid taxes, because he hasn't. No, I don't regret that at all. The Koch brothers, no one would help me. They were afraid the Koch brothers would go after them. So I did it on my own.
So no regrets about Mitt Romney, about the Koch brothers, because some people have even called it McCarthyite.
Well, they call it whatever they want. Romney didn't win, did he?
Boy, oh boy, that should be that should be his legacy. Joining us now is Ed Morrissey, featured columnist for HotAir.com, columnist for the week. Ed, basically, if there ever was an example of the ends justifies the means, and the Senate Majority Leader abusing his position and just lying, making it up out of whole cloth, and then saying 3 years later, well, it worked, didn't it? I mean, my gosh.
It's amazing, Steve, that he actually made this admission on camera in the first place. And I think the fact that he felt comfortable in doing that, and almost bragging about it, tells you how far gone politics has become in the U.S. And it would be bad enough if this was out on the campaign trail where people expect politicians to kind of slag on their opposition. But he said that at least one occasion on the Senate floor in his role as Senate Majority Leader. I mean, he deliberetely told lies to smear Mitt Romney in the middle of a presidential campaign. Now, that to me is something that the Senate Ethics Committee should be looking at. And if they're not, I think it says something about the Senate ethics process that they are giving this a pass, because that to me is an egregious abuse of the Majority Leader's power, or any senator's power for that matter, on the Senate floor.
Absolutely. And then he alluded to the Koch brothers, because he would constantly take to the floor, again, from the floor of the Senate, in his capacity as a Majority Leader, and bash the Koch brothers, saying all kinds of horrific things about them, which, again, was just very unseemly, if not downright unethical for a Majority Leader of the Senate. But let's talk. Let's go from the CNN interview to MSNBC. What are they going to do? They just had their worst ratings in I don't know how long. What is? I mean, we keep hearing about shakeup, major shakeup. They've tweaked, but they haven't really shaken anything up yet. What can we look for?
Well, a few years ago, I was actually on a panel discussion with Phil Griffin, the president of MSNBC.
Oh, I know him well, yeah.
And Phil's a pretty good guy to talk to. We had a conversation afterwards as well. But during the conversation, it was a really interesting panel discussion about how you build audience. And, Hot Air builds an audience. MSNBC has a particular way of building an audience. The CEO of HBO was part of that same panel, talking about how you build audience loyalty through shows like The Sopranos and now Girls. I think that was just coming on the air when we had this discussion. But the problem for Phil Griffin is that that's all they've done with MSNBC. The problem with them is that the shows just aren't very good. And you can only go so far on strident, progressive, tribal signaling, basically, is how I described it. And I mean, you can go ways with that, and I think they've run out the string remarkably well at MSNBC. But the Olbermann era is over. It was probably over really 3 or 4 years ago, and it's been a slow decline ever since, and now a very sharp decline. They really need to shake up their entire approach, and it doesn't necessarily mean that they have to become a conservative network. I think conservatives who are making that point miss the point. The point is that they have to be just better at what they do. And Ed Schultz, Lawrence O'Donnell, even Rachel Maddow, who actually does have broadcast chops, just aren't getting the job done. They need to find people who are going to give other people, other than the progressive fringe, a reason to tune in and see MSNBC, and they've got a model for it. Joe Scarborough, Mika Brzezinski have a vibrant, thriving show on in the mornings, Morning Joe, in which it kind of irritates everybody across the spectrum. But the views are well represented, and you don't have people shouting down conservative guests and flipping off their mics.
But has that not struggled in the ratings also? I mean, from what I read?
Struggled a bit. The problem I think is just the fact that it's MSNBC, and there are so few people that are actually making that a destination channel,
right,
that it plays poorly for Joe and Mika. But it is still. It's really the most relevant show that they've got on that channel.
Well, Ed, I got a suggestion. I think we need more Al Sharpton. Al Sharpton should be a contributor to every single show on that network, and you will see the ratings turn right around.
You know, I didn't mention him for a reason.
Well, no, you know,
because
Ed,
there's no explanation for that show in the first place.
all he's got to do is read the prompter, and people will tune in. I promise you. Hey, thanks, Ed Morrissey. Always great to talk to you. Sarah Westwood of the Washington Examiner's next.